So when we're talking about the strategies we might use in the classroom, to manage people or get to people to a more proactive place or space, the first thing to think about is how to slow things down. Because when people are operating from a sensory overload, sensory dysregulation, deep anxiety, not understanding or communicating very readily, not being given information very readily, they're always going to be in a heightened state. And so working on the idea that it might take a bit longer for this person to get their book out. It might take this person a bit longer to get themselves to the point where they're on the laptop doing what they need to do right now. And so slowing things down for that child and making that level of allowance for the child that it's working for, that really needs that, obviously needs that, but also there will be other children in that classroom that would benefit from that as well. When we're talking about proactive approaches, what we're really talking about is thinking about how to create a higher level of comfort and ease as opposed to dis-ease in the classroom for the student. And so some of the things that might need to be looked at is a sensory profile to understand all those sensory things, auditory, visual, vestibular, proprioception, all of the things that might be causing a huge level of discomfort for that child in the classroom, and then finding the tools, the sensory tools that will assist that child. So for some children, like a sensory diet, so maybe a swim in North Queensland or Queensland, a swim in the morning before you go to school as a big sensory, big muscle workout, to go to school and maybe have a crunchy apple at lunchtime, at morning tea time, to go for a run around the playground at lunchtime, to have some mints, MINTS, or some other small thing, maybe use a sensory tool for a little while, or go into a little igloo, some little quiet place to calm in afternoon tea. And then when people go home, maybe going for a run with dad, or just going out and jumping on the trampoline. And so without waiting for the child to need these things, what we are doing is delivering to them beforehand. This means that the child is actually topped up, and a lot more of that so-called, what looks like behaviour but which is sensory, is being met, and therefore you'll have a calmer child in the classroom. Of course, one of the most obvious things is to start developing a communication system for that child, because one of the things that I think is extraordinarily exciting about the most recent versions of speech and all the AAT is that many children are actually using those in a much more sophisticated way than they were earlier. There's two things about that, though. Once people start to use those systems and start to tell us things, we have to listen. So that's a problem. We have to actually make sure that the adults in the room are actively listening to what the child is saying once we find a way for the child to say it, and that's a challenge. And I think the other is to help the child not only learn how to press a button to say something, but to internally understand and appreciate what it is they want to say, and then be able to say it. That's actually a primary need before you get to the point where you can use any system. And so teaching children their emotional selves, teaching kids how to express that, to recognize it, these are all things that should be part of their education one way or another. I think the other thing is often the child who's actually considered to be naughty, knows themselves and defines themselves as bad, and this is one of the saddest things in the world for me. And so I think sometimes finding roles for that child in the classroom can make a huge difference. To be one of the people that gets picked to clean the board, and then the child might need help to do that, by the way, or to call the kids in, or to give out the folders, or whatever it is. To have that child actually taking a role in the classroom really makes a difference to the self-confidence and sense of belonging for that kid. And I think we don't do enough of that either. And then I think the other thing is the careful use of praise or acknowledgement, perhaps more than praise, where we see that the child is doing well as other children in the classroom, and we give those children collectively, not necessarily just the one child, some feedback to say, I see you guys are working really hard, well done. This is what we want to see in the class. So we're all geared up to tell people when they do the wrong thing. We're not so geared up to tell people when they're doing the right thing. And I do think we need to get into a strengths-based model where we're much better at telling people that than we are about taking their negative personalities out and reading it to them, which cannot be a good thing for any child's confidence or ability to manage in the world.